after I posted my Darcy, Elizabeth, and me video for Feb Regency, I realized it may have come across that I simply saw Pride and Prejudice as sister fiction, and that's not the case. That's actually how I saw it when I read it for the first time as a young girl of about 11 or 12 years of age. That got me to thinking that part of what makes classics that stand the test of time, is that they can speak to us at our own different ages, with our own different life experiences and ways that we view things, how that can change over time and still have significance and meaning. So I thought I would explore really briefly what Pride and Prejudice has meant to me over my life as my age has changed. And I found this really fun set of the life and age of both men and women drawings from Currier and Ives. And quite clearly, they changed these up over periods of years. And I'll show you a fun set before I discuss my different thoughts on how my appreciation and what I've taken from Pride and Prejudice over the 50 plus years 40 plus, I'm not that old yet, 40 plus years of reading it, what that means to me. So let me just show you these fun things. So the life and age of woman, and this set by Currier and Ives looks at the lives of both men and women over the decades. So not in this one so much as some of the later ones. Like this is a great one for the men. And it actually shows like this is like the age of, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on until a much older man. And Curry and Ives put these out for a bit because this is definitely the oldest looking one, but here's some other great ones. This one's not quite as colorful. Here's another one that gets even more interesting. I love all the top hats and how the hats change over a lifetime. Here's another one of the life and age of woman from the cradle to the grave, as it says. Another one of the gentlemen and the ladies and the gentlemen and the ladies and the last one with the gentleman. Fun stuff. I'll go back to this one since I am a female, not a male. So my perceptions and what spoke to me in Pride and Prejudice certainly changed over time. When I first read it as a very young girl of 11 or 12, I was in the period of reading what I would call family fiction or sister fiction. Did you know, just FYI, that Amazon actually has a specific category of books that's called sister fiction? And so I saw it from the age of what an 11 or 12-year-old would appreciate. I loved the family dynamics. I loved the sisterly dynamics between the sisters. And what also struck me at that age was the wit of it. Like how the first line actually stopped me completely short. And I literally paused and then I laughed because it's a funny first line. And I knew this was going to be a fun and funny book, which it certainly is. And I'm of a family of 5 daughters and only daughters, just like the Bennets. And I was in the kitty position. I was number 4, with my 3 older sisters being considerably older than me, like 5, 7, and 9 years older. And so for me, as I was growing up, I was kind of like, I don't go so far as to say the jokester, but I was the person who would try to use humor to alleviate the sometimes tense family interactions that can happen in a large family, especially in a large family with same-gender children. And so I appreciated the humor, the wit of Jane Austen in this book, and that, to me, it helped me form some of my own, hopefully witty, not as good as Jane, not as good as hers, some witty comebacks that I would have for my own sisters. So that's how I perceived it as an 11 or 12-year-old. When I read it in my later teens, early 20s, that's when the whole romantic aspect spoke to me, because that was something I was becoming more interested in myself. And so I really liked to see the interactions of like Jane and Bingley, Darcy and Elizabeth, of course, especially with Darcy Elizabeth, how that Pride and Prejudice could actually change the way that you perceive reality and another person, and perhaps you shouldn't rush to judgment. And so this book taught me some good lessons as a young adult. And as I proceeded through the decades, as the ladies do in this picture, I did marry. In my own marriage, there were issues. And when I read the book at that point, I saw what happened between the couples in a broader perspective. Like, definitely Mr. and Mrs. Bennet did not have the best relationship. And the Hursts, I would call them almost indifferent to each other. The best example of a relationship, I think, in the book is the Gardiners. And so that gave me a canvas to think about how my own relationship was working or not working. And I appreciated that. Perhaps like a decade later, I was writing some of my own fiction. Now, don't look for me on Amazon. I never have published my own fiction because I don't believe it's actually good enough for public consumption, but it's something I just enjoy doing. I more write scenes than books. And I started looking at it from a more literary perspective, not just how it reflected my own life and could help inform my own life. And from that, it's just like, how did she build character? How did she continue plot? And I was just like, she's a master at this. She really shows character and character arcs of development, because I don't think that's actually easily done, and it's certainly not well done by a lot of the fiction writers today, especially the ones who are what we would call more genre fiction. And she can definitely instruct us if we're willing to listen, because there's lots of excellent character development, plot development, and it's not huge action, it's small actions, and how each scene adds shades of character or elements to how the plot is slowly turning. So I felt like I really learned a lot in that aspect. And then more time later, as I read it again, I was helping other fiction authors with their books. And so it actually became interesting to discuss this book, because everybody knows this book. It's definitely one of the oldest or best, or oldest and best examples of a romantic fiction story. And so it's a great palette to discuss with authors about, hey, you might want to think about this, you might want to think about that. All of a sudden I realized, even though it was written like 200 years ago, all the hot tropes that come along in contemporary genre fiction, I can trace almost all of them back in some form or another to Pride and Prejudice. Like, for instance, one contemporary trope that's been popular for over a year and is still hot is enemies to lovers. And Pride and Prejudice with Darcy Elizabeth, absolutely enemies to lovers. Forced proximity has become, probably more about the last year, become a very popular contemporary romantic trope. And that's here in a couple places, actually. The first time being at Netherfield when Jane is sick, and then perhaps later when when Elizabeth and the Gardiners go to Derbyshire, and they spend quite a bit of time at Pemberley. And so it's just so funny. And of course, there's the classic, Darcy's maybe not quite the equivalent of a billionaire, but you've got the billionaire romance thing kind of goes on, because Darcy is so much more wealthy than Elizabeth. So many current popular contemporary genre fiction tropes can be found in Pride and Prejudice. So my appreciation of this book has evolved over time. I don't just see it as a sister fiction, although it still definitely holds up as that, like I did the first time I read it. My appreciation and my understanding of it has just become more nuanced over time, as my mind has hopefully grown and improved, as I have different experiences in life, and as I can look at it through different lenses, both as a reader, a writer, and someone who helps writers. And I think that's part of Jane Austen and any classic author's genius, is that the book can speak to us different ways at different times. Our meeting of the minds with the author is not just a singular moment or a singular event. It can transform and change over time and only add depth to our appreciation and ultimately depth to life, because I'm such a reader. My reading, especially when I read quality stuff, it does make my life better. And if you're a bookish person like me, you probably understand what I'm saying. Anyway, I just wanted to share my further thoughts on how great literature can change for us depending upon when we read it in whatever stage of life we're in at the moment. If you agree with this or if you disagree, please tell me about it in the comments. That's just wrong. Comments. And if you think this video is interesting, share with others you think might be interesting. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel because that's a cool thing. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope this has given you a little pause for thought about how your appreciation has changed for books if you've read them at different points in your life. I'm hoping to squeeze one more Feb Regency video in before Feb Regency is over later today. And again, thank you for watching.